Florida real estate is shifting. Inventory is up 24%, prices are flat, and houses are just sitting longer. Right now, buyers have an incredible amount of leverage, but here is the catch. If interest rates drop later this year, like many are anticipating, you can expect a flood of buyer competition and tighter deals in the market because this calm might not last. So right now could be your time to strike. It just depends on what happens with interest rates and what's happening in the market right now. So we're gonna be covering that in this video. What's up, everybody? Jake Fletcher here, your Miami real estate agent with the Fletcher Group at eXp Realty. And today we're gonna be zooming out and taking a look statewide at the entire state of Florida, covering single family homes, okay? So I'm gonna be showing you what the data says and what it means for your buying strategy or selling strategy. And every stat that I talk about in this video has a matching graph on screen. And if you wanna go deeper, create a custom plan for yourself, talk about your specific situation, there's a link down below in the description to book a one-on-one consultation with me, and I'd love to hear from you. So graph one that we're gonna be talking about today is closed sales. Okay, so closed sales, I got myself a little bit small on the screen here so you can see the months and everything there. But closed sales came in at 23,827 over here for the month of June. That's up from 24,756 in May. Year over year, we're actually up 2.8% compared to right over here last June. However, compare that to May, which was down 5.7% year over year from here versus over here, okay? So, basically tells us that this summer did not kick off with the amount of enthusiasm and energy that we saw last summer. If we see here, we had a big drop off there, but overall there was more closed sales last summer as a whole. So, while demand is present, it's definitely more cautious and, definitely a softer summer overall. The sales are in their soft girl era this summer compared to last summer, okay? So next graph we're gonna be looking at is inventory. Let's shuffle on over there. So inventory, we're seeing rise year over year. As you can see in the graph, it's basically just a rocket ship to the moon. 215,600 homes on the market in June. That's up 24.2% from last year, okay? So, that's a lot. However, it did slip slightly from May. You can see the slight little decline there. May was at about 217,000. So what does that mean? It means that sellers are still listing their homes, but they're sitting longer on the market because, we see higher and higher inventory month after month after month, with the slight exception of May to June. But overall, we see, this upward trend, meaning that, the active inventory is just building up on the market, okay? And when inventory rises faster than sales do, that eventually pressures prices, okay? So continuing looking at inventory here, let's look at new listings. So we had 30,153 new listings in June. That's down from 33,000 in May, okay? So about 3,000 less. That's a 2.7% decrease year over year from June in 2025 compared to June in 2024 right there, okay? So not a huge decrease year over year. Overall, we're still seeing a slow upward trend overall. I know I said overall twice, but we're still seeing a slow upward trend in new listings since the rate hikes in 2022. We can see that pretty much over here. Basically it took a little bit of time, for sellers to be like, what's going on? Do we want to list? We had this big steep drop off. Interest rates started to rise at the very, very end of 2021. So you saw like a big incline here of people maybe trying to get ahead of that, and then a big drop off of what we call the golden handcuffs, where people had really low rates and they didn't want to sell because that means that they would lose their really low rate. seems like sellers are more likely, more willing to list now than they were a couple years ago, as we see this sort of general upward trend here. Even if they're not getting the prices that they hoped for, they're kind of like, all right, well, we have to sell, or for whatever reason, they're deeming that, okay, let's go ahead and list on the market. So looking at the next graph here, months of inventory, another rocket ship to the moon. But in this case, months of inventory actually stayed flat at 5.6 months of inventory in June. That's the same as April and May. It's actually year over year, though, we see a 27.3% jump from last year's 4.4 months of inventory. And if you're new to the term, months of inventory measures how long it would take to sell all the current listings if no new homes came onto the market, okay? So 6 months is considered a balanced market. Anything less is considered a seller's market because homes are moving quickly. Sellers have the upper hand. Anything more than 6 months of inventory, 7+ is considered a buyer's market because buyers have the upper hand. So we're just under that balanced mark at 6 months. So it's still kind of slightly favoring sellers. But if this trend continues, we could definitely see it tip into buyer market territory by the end of the year. So you can bet we'll be keeping a close eye on that on this channel. So graph number 5 here, we're looking at median sale price. This is the one everybody wants to know. How much is it going to cost me to buy a freaking home, Jake? Just tell me how much they cost. So median sale price, you can see for years now, it's looked more or less flat compared to the beginning of the pandemic. When home prices in Florida really took off, they've flattened out. They've had some little tipsy turns here and there, but they've been pretty flat. However, from May to June, we saw a slight reduction. Median sale price came in at $412,000 in June. That's down $3,000 from May when it was $415,000 right here. May was actually up from April. So the 3-month view shows stability, right? And big picture, we've been in this $410,000 to $415,000 range since last June. Okay, so since right here, we've been floating between 410 to 415. So, not only the last few months, but the last year has shown a lot of stability in price action. And while prices aren't really appreciating quickly, they're not crashing either, So all the doom and gloom headlines, oh, Florida real estate is done, this is it, this is the end. Not really quite the case, okay? So moving it up to the next graph here, we're looking at time to contract. Similar to days on market, median time to contract ticked up from 44 days to 46 days. That's a 31.4% increase compared to 2024, though, when we look at June over here of 2024. In plain English, basically homes are taking longer to sell and buyers have a lot more breathing room, okay? So before, back in these days when you had like 10 days on market, 9 days on market, craziness happening, basically a home would hit the market, and if you didn't know about it the same day that it hit the market, your chances of being the one to buy it were very, very slim to none. Versus now, you can kind of see a home that's been on the market for 30, 40 days and go check it out and then be the one to actually end up buying it, okay? So buyers have more breathing room, sellers not so much. They're kind of sweating the load a little bit. And it depends on your market. Here in Miami and in Southeast Florida, well-priced homes that are, that are especially turnkey are still going rather quickly. The stuff that needs a lot of work or that is, not priced well, is sitting on the market longer, or just homes that maybe aren't up to people's tastes. It could be a nice home, well taken care of, but it might be a little outdated or might have, some things in it that make people be like, what is this? I don't want to have to change the floors and the this and that because it doesn't, match their style, or it's, something that's just out of the range of normal, so to speak. Like if you have bright green carpet in your house or something like that. Now, graph number 7, here we're looking at median price to original list price. Sellers received 95.4% of their original list price in June. That's down 0.1% from May. So, they're getting slightly further away from what they want to get when they're listing their house for sale originally. And that's down 1.1% year over year. Okay, so compared to June over here, it was at 96.5%, and now we're down to 95.4%. And this metric tells us how much sellers are having to come down from their asking price. Okay, so if it was listed for 100 grand and it sold for 90 grand, that's a 90% original price to sale price ratio, or median percent of original list price. Okay, so it's a sign, right now that it's trending downwards. It's a sign that sellers are having weakening leverage. Okay, and buyers are having increased leverage, which is why I say at the beginning of this video, this could be a good time to strike. We've seen from back in the pandemic days, really these weren't at 100%. These were above 100%. There was a time when if you listed it for 400,000, it was going to sell for 450 or so on and so forth. So, the graph doesn't go above 100%, but these were pretty much at 100 or above. 105, 110%, craziness. And there was a lot more cash sales in the market back then as well, which is what we're going to look at now. And you can see that here, where it's trended down. This is cash sales as a percentage of closed sales. They actually came in at 26% of all closings, slightly down from 26.2% in May and 27.2% year over year back in June 2024. Okay, so why does this matter? Well, cash buyers often signal investor activity, and Florida still has a really strong investor base. Okay, about a quarter of the market for single family homes are investors or cash buyers, but even they're pulling back a little bit, possibly waiting for a more favorable pricing situation. They might want to see that median sale price come down a little bit more, although, it's been hovering in that 410 to 415 range, like we mentioned, for the last year. So we'll see what ends up happening over the next months and year or so to see if prices remain stable or if they come down. My prediction is that prices are going to remain stable. I'm not expecting to see a further correction in prices. If so, it'll be very slight, and then eventually the amount that competition increases when interest rates go down, we could see prices go up then. So the amount of difference between, interest rates coming down and your monthly payment reducing versus, what you could get in terms of a lower monthly payment because the price is lower, I think now is a good time to strike, because if you wait a long time and interest rates go up, there's more competition in the market, prices could go back up, and then your monthly payment goes back up, versus now you have less competition, you can negotiate a better deal for yourself, and if you can buy down your interest rate, that's the golden scenario. And if you're in a position like that, this is a really good time to negotiate. Okay, it just is. And if you don't know what buying down your rate is, basically you're paying points forward on your loan in order to bring down your fixed interest rate a little bit to make your monthly payments lower. If you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to me and we can talk about it more. So to sum it up, sales are stable, inventory is rising, and prices are flat. Okay, the market is transitioning, and if you're a buyer, this is the time to start planning. It really is. Even if you're not wanting to strike right now, I always say it's never too early to start planning, especially working with somebody like myself who can help you put a really good plan in place. You've got more inventory to choose from, you have less competition, and potentially, definitely, a lot more negotiation power that is in your hands right now. So hit the link in the description to schedule a strategy session with me, or drop your questions in the comments down below. I read every single comment and try to respond to every single comment as well. So let me know what you guys are thinking. If there's a specific market in Florida that you'd like me to take a look at, drop that in the comments down below as well, and reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you guys. So that's about it for this video. Jake Fletcher here with the Fletcher Group at eXp Realty. And if you hadn't subscribed by now, definitely hit subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.